kids need to be trained, educated, formed in a very different way from what's successful out there, and more children need that. Schools failing many kids, whether it's even in remedial education, kids who have ADHD, dyslexia, remedial schooling doesn't work for them either, it's sad because it's quite expensive. So edupreneurs just want to change education, and they do it with their management or business background. That's with their current skill set.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edit Undo podcast. Ooh, this is going to be a great one. For all of those with kids and those interested in education, we have got a treat for you today. Today we are speaking to Irene Porres, and this is amazing because this is the first time I'm getting to speak to an edupreneur. I mean, it's probably in the name, so you could guess what it means, but I'm not even going to explain any of that because I think Irene would probably do a better job than I would. So, Irene, you are very welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Alfie, and thank you, Steph. I'm actually quite excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And you know, this for me, I think most of the listeners and some of the people who know me already know that this is something that's going to be pretty close to my heart because me and the more typical education system have been butting heads for many years. And especially in university, we kind of didn't end on the best of terms. But I've since sort of developed my love for learning. And that's one of the reasons why when I kind of had the initial idea to speak to you, it's something that I've kind of been wanting to do for quite a while. Because I think there are many people who are sort of like me who either previously or are currently struggling on their learning journey and don't necessarily see a way forward. So I'm super excited to hear about both your journey and what it is that you're doing. And maybe that's a good place to start. Let's before we go into some of your background, maybe just let us know a little bit about what it is that you're doing and what this edupreneur thing means.
All right. So an edupreneur is a person who has a passion for starting a business. It's a type of entrepreneurship, but with the aim of changing how education's done. As you mentioned, it doesn't work for everybody. And I think as our children are more and more exposed to social media and the whole parenting style is much more conversational. It's not so much, I have authority, you must do what I tell you because I tell you and I'm your parent. Kids need to be trained, educated, formed in a very different way from what's successful out there, and more children need that. Schools failing many kids, whether it's even in remedial education, kids who have ADHD, dyslexia, remedial schooling doesn't work for them either, it's sad because it's quite expensive. So edupreneurs just want to change education, and they do it with their management or business background. That's with their current skill set. What I've done is start a school. I actually shouldn't call myself that because we're not licensed yet. So we're more like a learning center. But we've created this open plan, open space where kids come. They love learning. They don't want to go home at 4:30 in the afternoon, even though they've been here since 7 o'clock, sometimes 6:30. And it's amazing. It's amazing. You actually have to come and see it, Alfie. You haven't come yet. I'm quite hurt.
Not yet.
Where is it based?
Yeah, no.
We're in Johannesburg, near Rosebank.
Okay. That is super
And our whole idea
interesting.
is that the world of today, I mean, and we're experiencing this right now. It's virtual, it's shared working spaces. Go hang out at a coffee shop and with your laptop and you're all set. So that's what we're trying to represent here. Give the kid a computer, someone they can trust, and they can fly.
Yeah. And I really love it because, you know, I think we all inherently know that the educational system or the way we educate humans should change and should evolve. But very few people are actually brave enough to go into the space and figure out how, because it's such a complex question, right? How should we be educating our kids? How should it change? So I'm so excited to hear what you're doing and what your approach is. But firstly, it's so exciting to just speak to you and see that there is actually people and organizations that are taking that step to take a bit of a risk as well, right? To figure it out, because I'm sure you guys don't have it all 100% figured out yourselves yet,
Nope.
which is
Not at
very
all.
vulnerable.
And actually, what's scary is we won't know if it works until 12 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the kid in grade 1 won't finish matric for another 12 years. So it's a big risk.
Sure.
But there's signs. There's signs that it is working. So.
And I'm super keen to get into some of those signs, but maybe before we do that, can you just tell us a little bit about how this all started? Because I don't think it's very typical for a person to just up and decide to establish their own learning center. So how did you get into it?
Not at all. So I am an educator here in South Africa. Before South Africa, I was not an educator. I was an accountant. So my actual educational, my own training has been in the business world. I was working corporate for many years, and then trying to find meaning in my life, right? The typical phrase. I left that, came to South Africa as a volunteer, and the nonprofit that I was at was an educational nonprofit. Discovered teaching, decided I want to give this my all, got my PGCE here in South Africa. And I've been in government schools for 7 years, teaching high school accounting. And I loved it. I mean, I love working with the kids. And I was at 3 schools, very different demographics, you know. But I always saw that something was missing, something was lacking. I would try to make my classes very engaging, being from trying to represent it like a company. So you will walk in and you will be the marketing manager. You will be the HR manager because you will do the class list, many things like that. And the kids would get excited, but not really. It wouldn't last. So something was missing. And I remember having a chat with one of the grade 10s and asking her, what's wrong with school? You're clever. Your marks are good. But I can see that you don't have the motivation. You don't have the drive to actually take advantage of that skill that you have. And she said, ma'am, school became awful from grade 4. And I was like, red flag. Something's happening in grade 4 that's not working. Then after 8 years of teaching with this kind of great pulling teeth, right? Kids are great, but they're not really responding. I thought I need to do something else. I'm tired. I'm bored. So I thought, let me get an MBA. So I started looking for online master's programs, and I found one in the States that actually brought together education and the MBA program. After a year of modules, the capstone is to create a educational project. So it could be a podcast, it could be an online tutoring service, it could be anything. So as I was considering whether I would apply or not, I thought, what would be my capstone? What would be a capstone? And talking to friends and family, I got a link to a TED Talk by Sugata Mitra, where he did an experiment in 1998, 1999, showing that kids who are interested can actually teach themselves. A bunch of kids in India who were 6, 7, 8 years old saw a computer when it was Windows 3.0, figure out how to use it, even though it was in English, taught each other how to use it, and eventually learned English in the process. So I thought, this is fascinating. Let me tap into that. And then other TED Talks and other people. And so I thought, why spend all that money on an MBA in America, take that cash and use it as my startup capital for this project? I can just do it. And I realized, because of the teaching method, you actually don't need that much capital. You don't need a huge sports field. You don't need an amazing building with many classrooms. If it's kids working on their own, you just need an open space. So I actually started a corporate park, rented out 300 square meters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Drywall. The neighbors were not very impressed, but I actually got learners from those people who work there. And then you don't need as many teachers. You do need teachers who are capable of interacting with the kids across many subjects. But it's not chalk and talk. We're focusing on the learning. We don't need all the extramurals because kids will be happy and interested. They do need to play, but that's a different need. So I can do it. So that's what I did. And one step at a time. I mean, it's funny. Last week we were having a strategy meeting with my team. And it dawned on me, it's only been 2.5 years through COVID, and we have 43
Two
kids.
2.5 years. Wow.
2.5. And people come in, and when we tell them that prospective parents, they don't believe us. Because it's running. It looks like it's been here for like 10.
Yeah.
It's actually...
Wow.
It was quite...
I find...
humbling. It was very humbling.
Yeah. So you started this new learning center or educational center in the midst of COVID. I'm so intrigued. How on earth do you get people to actually take the risk of, moving my kid from a conventional school to, take this risk on me, starting my whole own educational thing, especially during COVID, where kids and the whole planet were essentially going through a lot of friction, a lot of change. So another big change, especially on such a fragile thing as a person, a developing person. How did you go about that, starting in COVID?
Well, it was right before COVID, so we didn't know COVID was coming.
Yeah.
We might have changed our mind if we knew COVID was coming. It was still January. So I spoke with a friend of mine who runs a program at her church in a township. And I figured I need to find precisely people who are willing to take the risk, because the value they'll get is way higher than what they're currently getting. So we went to the township's program and offered them this opportunity. Look, we're starting a new learning method. We're not licensed. Actually, please don't call me a school because I'll end up in jail. But
noted.
We we will take. We will let you pay what you're paying now. So if it's $50, because it's a government school, we'll charge you $50. But trust us. Trust us with your child.
Sure.
And we will take you through matric. And we got 7 kids that way. Mostly kids who were in township schools, huge classes, exposed to bullying, light school, but we're not doing well. And we thought, well, this is great because they're not doing well at school. Many of them don't speak English at home. So if we want to show the effectiveness of our system, this is golden. Because we can really show a very bad before picture and someone who a traditional school would have given up on, because there's no way they can survive in the traditional system, who can hopefully go to university once they finish matric, or finish matric and start their own little side hustle and start helping their family. So that's what we did. 7 kids. Then COVID started. From that group, we got 3 more. Of course, word of mouth. They start seeing the T-shirts and they're like, ooh, where did you go to school? It's like, well, actually, I did go to school, but, And because of COVID, parents asked us to take on their younger children. Because we started with only grade 4. If you want kids to read and write on their own and research, they need to know how to read and write. So we couldn't take younger children. That's not what we were trying to teach. But they asked us, please, can you take my grade 1? They've been out of school for 12 months, for 8 months. So we talked about it, and we thought, you know what, let's bite the bullet and figure out how to teach people to read and write. We're still figuring it out. So that way we got 3 more. So by the end of the first year, we had 7 plus 4, 11 kids. And then it's been word of mouth from there.
That's amazing. Sure.
Yeah.
I want to quickly jump back. You mentioned the in the beginning the payment model you guys were going for. Is that still something you do? It's kind of like, you know, what are you currently paying for education for your child, or have you kind of standardized the payment now, or the enrollment fee, so to say?
Oh yes, we have an enrollment fee based on our operating costs, which is comparable to a Model C school.
Okay.
Or a Model C high school. Primary schools are usually cheaper than high schools, but the level of teacher engagement and education we're giving you is, I mean, we're all actually high school teachers teaching primary. So I figured it's okay. I'll charge what a high school charges, which is still about $36K a year. And then these children have been grandfathered into the system. So they still pay that monthly fee because they were willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our parent organization then has a bursary program where someone who needs it can apply, and then they sort of fall into the same category as those first 7 kids based on how many funds they have available. So, but that's the school fee is still the same amount. So actually those children who are getting that nice school fee from that first group actually have a bursary that covers the balance of their school fee.
Okay.
I still need to, pay teacher salaries and such.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
And rent.
Very true. And so I want to sort of almost take like a different route to the conversation, because we're speaking a lot about the learning experience, but from the perspective of the students and the parents who might want to engage with this. But tell us a little bit about the startup side of what you're doing, because essentially, yes, you're starting a learning institution, but you're also starting like a new business, and you have to think about things like how to actually bring teachers on board and how to integrate them into what you're doing. And can you tell us a little bit about some of your early experiences about how you actually put together a team of people to believe in what you're doing? Because I mean, even if you think about it from the perspective of a teacher, if they're going to join in on what you're doing, they are also in a sense taking a chance for their career, because
Huge.
it's undiscovered. There isn't really like a track record to base their decision off of. So can you just tell us a little bit about how that has been?
Sure. So there's a few challenges. The first one, as you mentioned, is the risk for their future career. Because, I hope we'll be here for many, many years, but I can't guarantee that. As I said, I'm not even licensed. And we have had candidates apply for a position who, upon hearing that, say, oh, whoa, then I'm not comfortable with that. Which makes sense. If you're married, you have kids, you cannot take that risk. We've also had other candidates. We have one person who was actually working with us for a year. She was brilliant, but she wanted to follow a very set career path. She wanted to then be an HOD of her subject, eventually deputy principal, be a principal, which is great. We need people like that in the other schools out there. But we're very flat. Our whole culture is one of openness and trust. So as soon as you start adding middle management, you lose that.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids have access to me all the time, unfortunately. So I struggle to get my work done. But on the flip side, it's beautiful because I have a real feel for what's happening in the school. The bigger challenge, though, I would say, is because everyone loves Mitra. Our interview process consists of applying. If you have enough experience, we invite you to spend a day. And part of that day is to pretend you're here, engage with the kids, talk to the other staff, get involved. So you see what it's like, because even though it's a nicer work environment than a traditional school, it can be a lot more demanding because you have to be on your toes the whole time. Yeah. You're teaching the whole time, one-on-one. Yeah. And we watch how you interact with the kids. And for some people, they love it. They're like, oh, this is so cool. People are so nice. The kids love to work. But they get very nervous about not having control of the learning space.
I can imagine.
Because for a teacher, and I've experienced this, when you prepare a lesson, you know it. You understand everything perfectly, and you have this need to basically open up all the brains and throw all the information in there. So that when you mark a test, you hear your self-talk. Come, baby, just tell me what I told you. So to open the door and tell them, just Google it and see what you find. It's scary. It's scary. You're not going to get the answer that you want. And you might actually get an answer that's not what you know.
Yeah.
But that's the real world. That's how we work out there, right? I mean, when you submit a report to your boss, they don't have a marking memo. Oh, I got the right. I mean, they're paying you to do something because they don't want to do it. So they don't know the answer when they give you a project. So in that sense, that's our real struggle. We have ongoing meetings one-on-one. The head of academics meets with each teacher every week. How is the classroom going? Can I see your lesson plans? We watch lessons so that we can keep honing their teaching style, as well as give them confidence that it works. Watch the kids. They are learning. They might not sound like you. They might not think like you. But they can think. They can think. And it's because of you standing back and taking that risk. So that's very hard, especially if someone has been in education for a long time. So our challenge has been finding someone who's qualified, who has the teaching experience, but is willing to let go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the biggest challenge.
Sure.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I would like to pause quick and just for all the listeners' sake, because Alfie has told me a little bit about what the curriculum looks like or what the approach is that you take with the learning center. But I want to hear from you, if for the people listening, what is the difference between, if you take any age of one of your students, what they would be doing currently in a conventional education system compared to what they would do in a typical day in your learning center?
Sure. So let's take science, for example. So in a traditional school, you would have science for 3 hours a week, different days of the week. We teach in a block. So this week is the science week. You start the day, you do an hour of math, an hour of English every day, and then you have 2 hours of science. So it's 5 lessons. And let's say we're doing, which one were they doing recently? Living beings. So they're looking at plants. The way the teacher would structure it is start with a question to make them think about plants. Could I ever have a purple plant? Have you ever seen a purple plant? And then they have to start thinking, purple plant, purple plant. And then from that, she'll throw a question at them that they have to start researching online with a group and finding information about. Then the next day, she'll build up on that with a different question. And by the end, through that researching back and forth, they've learned what chlorophyll is. They've learned the life cycle of a plant, what a living being is versus not a living being, to different degrees. Someone who's, because we teach them by phases. So the grade 4, 5, and 6 are together, working together. So obviously a grade 4 will learn plants at their cognitive level, what their brain can handle. And the grade 6 will probably have gone much deeper. And then by the end of the week, she gives them a test, which we call a checkpoint, which has 2 sections, what everyone must answer. And then if you feel like being challenged, the bonus section, which allows the grade 6s and even some grade 4s to I really know what a plant is. They can go ahead and be challenged in that way. So that makes it different. You can really see the difference also in math and science. The kids work one-on-one, so they have their book and they go at their pace, and we give them the book that they're ready for. So I have a grade 4 at the moment who's doing grade 7 work. It was homeschooled until grade 2. And his dad is a math teacher, so they really pushed the math. Okay, fine, so carry on. So he's there with his grade 7 book. For English, he's at a grade 5 level. So he's working in the grade 5 book. You can go faster. And if it's March and you have finished your book, I'll give you the next one. Why hold you back? It's actually very funny. We're doing the same with the grade 2s. But instead of doing as much academic work as they're younger, we have club at the end of the day, which means that you can either do some dancing, some singing, crafts, whatever, except for the grade threes. The grade threes have to do extra math and extra English. So at grade 1 comes, ma'am, I also want to do more math. Can I join the grade threes? Like, okay, here's your book. They went off to join the grade threes. I'm like, it's not, this child is not a nerd, trust me. But they have this need to engage with it. It's so funny because you would think that being in front of a book the whole day just doing activities would be so boring, right? So actually last term, I apologize if I'm digressing, but I get excited and then all these ideas or stories come into my mind. So last term, we had a lady teaching the little ones. We call them Alpha because it's the Greek letter for the beginning, grade 1, 2, and 3. And she was more traditional. So she would watch a video with all the kids in front of her, grade 1, 2, and 3 together. Then she would do an activity, all of them together. And then she would break them up into little groups and they would rotate. She got a different job, so she's not with us this term. So we thought, let's try the next phase method down there. You have your book, and we rotate every 20 minutes. So there's actually 2 kinds of books. One that's more like a textbook, then one that's math drills. And then the third one is playing against each other on a computer. So to see who's faster with the times table or whatever. So, and I'm the one down there because I don't have a teacher. So Miss P is teaching math to grade 1s. So we're there. And at one point I say, so do you guys miss your other lessons? Like, what do you mean, ma'am? I'm like, well, books are boring. Don't you prefer watching the video and then sitting on the floor? She looks at me. No, ma'am, I like the book better. I'm like, you do? But books are so boring. No, the questions are fun. And the one next to her, the answers are fun too. And I was just like, this is so counterintuitive. It's so counterintuitive. And it's so simple. It's so simple. So what we've done is down there, we have 20 kids. It's myself and 2 university students walking around, checking answers and encouraging the children. In a normal school, you would have 3 fully blown educators telling the kids to be quiet, to sit still, put your hand up, put your hand down. Okay, everybody, what's 2 plus 2? Write down number 4. Right, sit still, don't move. And anyway, I have majorly digressed, but it's just, I'm always thinking about these things and they just come out.
And the thing is, it's amazing. And I think it's so amazing to see that kids are getting to experience this, because I remember, like, there are a few like key moments through my learning experience that I remember. I remember when I was in I think it was around grade 2, grade 3, and it was before like a test in history, and I struggle with reading, and I'm like dyslexic as well, so I'm the typical student that might have gone to Mitra. But so my mom sort of saw that I was, struggling and reading wasn't really working for me. So for about like a week before that test, every day I'd sort of come home and my mom would sort of spend the time to go through the history textbook with me. And we'd kind of like read in the textbook, and then my mom would actually tell me the history around what happened and why it happened. And I, like, while I was working with her, I enjoyed history. And then I would go to school and I'd do history and I'd be like, what are we doing here? And then I got to this test after doing all of this preparation, and I felt like I was so prepared. And then the questions that they asked me were like questions to basically cut and paste from a textbook onto a test. But I had all of this surrounding like contextual knowledge that wasn't necessarily relevant. And as much as I was like a young kid at that point, I sort of realized that what we were doing in school was not necessarily learning about the real world, because it wasn't asking about the context. It wasn't asking about all of these interesting things that my mom had told me about. And like, that was one of the first indicators. And then fast forward, like, I'd say 15, 18 years to once I dropped out of university and started working. And eventually, like, I started getting into audiobooks. and I started to like reignite my love for learning. And I mean, Steph knows how much I talk about audiobooks all the time, but once I was able to direct my own learning, guided by my own interest and curiosity, it became something that I did on a daily basis. I think like every day now I've got a different thing that I'm interested, whether it's a fiction book, whether it's a book about, historical religions or anthropology, or all of these things that are absolutely unrelated to my job. Like, but they draw my curiosity, and they sort of, they pull something out of me towards the knowledge. And for a child to have access to that is so amazing. And I think one of the things that I do want to ask a little bit about is, and you mentioned it a little bit, the idea of the fact that the students sort of do research, and you pose them a question and they sort of move forward. Like, how do you actually let them essentially take control? Because when I think about even both school, but even like the working environment, there's so many managers and educators and leaders who don't know how to actually like give control. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on like what you could speak to a person who is maybe struggling with that. Like, how do you actually give control to the person who is in the learning seat?
It's a challenge. As I mentioned earlier, we're still trying to master that and help our teachers enjoy that process. I can tell you from the learning environment. So I don't know how it would translate into the corporate world or the working world where you're dealing with an adult. We do give some boundaries to the children when doing the research. Partly as to assist the learning. If it's a completely open question, first, they'll never finish because there's so much knowledge out there. But also, you need to model for them what it means to set a deadline, how to break one question into smaller questions, to know, okay, I have a sufficient answer for this item that I can then move on and tackle this other aspect of the bigger question. So we start by modeling a lot and then slowly stepping back. So, for instance, this has happened more with our senior phase kids, the ones we call Delta, which are grade 7, 8, and 9. So they also do their subjects in blocks. And it's a much bigger question that at the end of the week, they actually sit in front of a panel of teachers. Many of them have never taught that subject or know anything about that subject, as well as admin staff. And they have to show us their findings. This week, they were doing models of matter. So the difference between liquid, gas, and a solid. So it's science. They had different experiments to play with glycerin versus oil versus water, which one's denser, volume, all these things, right? So the teacher told them, okay, the presentation has to include a table where you compare the three for these things. And she guides them as to what possible experiments can be. So choose 5 liquids, and they chose 5 liquids. So it's more guided. Eventually, what we will do is just give them the big question and help them plan the week. All right, guys, so let's work backwards. On Friday is your presentation. What must you do on Thursday to be ready for that presentation on Friday? Well, the presentation must be ready so that you can practice on Thursday with the teacher, and then you can fix it. Great. If it has to be ready on Thursday, what must you do on Wednesday? Well, I must have finished my research and be working on my slides. Perfect. So what must you do on Tuesday? So we are teaching them how to approach their work. Because by then they have learned how to use Google. So the previous group, we focus more on, can you trust any website that you find when you go on Google? Learn how to actually go into a link and look at a website. Don't just trust the first page you get in Google with results. Many do that. Well, that's what Google said. Google's not a website. It's a search engine, right? Teaching them, ma'am, I found a website, but it was too difficult to read. Well, what if you look for kids at the word for kids, because it will simplify the language. I don't know what this means. Have you looked in the dictionary? Have you looked in the thesaurus? So we give them all these resources. So we're teaching them how to use the material that they have at hand.
Yeah.
And then through that, slowly guide them.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're not giving them the answer.
Yeah.
So they
What I
hopefully by the
really
time they get to
like-
grade 10, they
Yeah.
can manage their time as well as know what format to use for explaining things or presenting things.
It does sound like you're also teaching them how to be more trusting of themselves, which is something kids don't obviously have, because you have a lot of external either environments or structures in place to rely on, as opposed to relying on yourself, which then you often see this, right? You often see the kids who do really well in school, and then as soon as they have to go to university and they step outside of their parents' environment or their home environment, they fail within the educational system, because now they have to have so much self-reliance, and it's almost like it's been unlearned through school, having all these systems to rely on, which is really interesting. But at the same time, it sounds like there's such an adaptive approach, not only with the students in your center, but also to the teachers, which I really love. Because, we all like to think that life is... there's a lot that we can control, and we should know everything, and uncertainty is not good, but it's almost like you are embracing the fact that there's still a lot of uncertainties, not only just in how we approach teaching the kids, but also uncertainty within kids is also okay. Everything doesn't have to be worked out to the T all the time, which is... I find such a valuable way to approach it. I don't know how you...
Yeah.
It's very interesting how you especially convince or speak or handle parents, because you do still get many people, and I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong way, but you do get people who prefer a more predictable way of living, especially when it comes to teaching their kids and helping them be okay with an environment that is also still evolving and adapting and figuring it out as you go along. That's quite scary for people who like predictability.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thankfully, the parents we're getting are those who have realized that it doesn't work for them. So their children either hate going to school, because either they're bored because they're too clever, or it's too difficult, so they're not coping, or the classes are too big, so they feel lost. No one cares about me. Because kids have more emotional needs or academic needs, you might say. So they're willing to try because they're desperate. They love their children. They want the best for their kids, and they feel like they're failing their children. One of the new learners we got this year, was at a traditional school, diagnosed with ADD. So they took him to a homeschooling center. And the parents were quite nervous because his marks shot up tremendously. They're like, this is something odd's happening here. It was too radical. And the learning center wouldn't show them the kids' work. So he came here. And they explained to us, he's ADD, he's off the meds. Let's try this. They were going to try a homeschooling packet where you buy the books and you do it yourself. But they were very nervous about that. So we met the child. He started studying, and we could see the ADD was kicking in. So they put him back on the meds. And he's supposed to be grade 6. His math is grade 4. So let's have him work at grade 4. But he's older, so he'll work faster. And then we'll help him catch up. And we've been showing the works, with the work of the kid, the tests. And the mom started crying at the parents' meeting that we had at the end of term 1, saying no one has taken so much interest in my child
Oh.
with transparency. Because we
Sure.
told her, great kid, but he's not here. Mentally, he loves to cycle. He's probably out cycling in the mountains. He ain't here.
Wow.
And sure, we have ways to go, and the kid has to work hard, but there's hope, if we collaborate with him. So
Yeah.
anyway.
So I remember when you and I initially sort of connected, and we sort of went out for a coffee, and you were telling me about some of the people and some of the thought leaders that sort of inspired your journey. One of the ones I think that stood out, you told me about a man named Sir Ken Robinson.
Yes, he's
And I ended
brilliant.
up watching his TED talk, and I loved it. He's had a number, but there was one specifically where he mentioned something that I think is extremely important, and especially in this creative space. We've been talking a lot about education, but one of the reasons that we kind of have this podcast is to focus specifically around creativity. And in his talk, one of the things he mentions is the fact that the way education is geared at the moment, it makes us scared of being wrong. It makes us fear that red cross, and we forget how to be a learner. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of your thoughts on the matter, and if there's anything that you're doing specifically to address that, just to help students, help your students and your learners become a little bit more comfortable with the possibility of being wrong, and just how to think or deal with that?
So first thing I try to do is be very honest when I've made a mistake, even if it's silly. Like, I'll be teaching or saying something, and they're like, "Ma'am," I'm like, "Oops, I'm sorry, I messed it up," and then I'll start again. Because if the principal can make mistakes, I can make mistakes. I also verbally tell them constantly, if we break something, just tell me. We can either fix it, we replace it, or we put up with not having it for a while, but I'm not going to take out my ruler and discipline you or yell at you. We all make mistakes. So if I break something, I say, I broke it. Sorry, guys. We will not have whatever. And what we've done is every week we have a meeting with all the kids called Mitra Meter. We have a thermometer on the board. And as they do things whether one person does something great, we reward everybody. If you help someone, we reward everybody. And if you don't, we give that nasty red cross to the whole group. And as the thermometer goes closer to the total of 400 for the year, we're going to have a pizza party at the end of the school year. No school, just have fun. And then we set up a big goal for everyone to work towards. And if you're honest with me, even if no one knows that you came to talk to me, I'll give everybody a tick because you're showing that trust. And it's happened a few times. Someone says, "Ma'am, I broke this," or someone came once, "Ma'am, please help me. I keep making fun of this other person." Okay, well, you were honest. So I wouldn't put their name, but say, someone came to me and told me something very difficult. Tick, and everyone gets a point
Sure.
up on the thermometer. So that's one way. Academically, what's been very useful is the fact that we don't teach them in grades, that we have everybody together. And you can see a grade 4 is at the grade 6 level, a grade 6 is at the grade 4 level. So there's no public acknowledgement of, oh, this guy is so smart and this guy is not so smart. We don't really care. You're doing your own work. You're on your own page in the book. Carry on. And then when marking, we might put the event, eventually I read X or the like, or circle. This answer's not right. Try again. And we try to balance the feedback with positive and negative. So even the kids who do that weekly presentation, we give them feedback. You were giving us your back the whole time, reading your slides. Okay, well, that's bad. But you did this very well. So next week, try working on this other thing. So instead of saying, shame on you, you did something you shouldn't have, it's let's see this as an opportunity to improve, to do something better, to set a goal for growth for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because you might think, because you don't want the person to just be right regardless of what they say. Instead, you want to make them comfortable with being wrong and okay to take another chance at it. Because, and I mean, anybody who's sort of been an entrepreneur or tried to start a business or been in the sort of development process of anything realizes that you need to be wrong many times before you actually get to being right.
Yep.
And so you need to get all of the red crosses before you can actually get to that green tick. And it also makes being right worth so much more. Because when everybody's right, regardless of what they say, what does it even matter? What does it even matter if you are right? Because there is no value in the success. So I think
other thing we've done, Alfie, is we put lots of emphasis on how the children, their work ethic, you might say their teamwork ethic. So when we give them their reports at the end of every term, you have their academic mark, which is comparable to what you would find in any school report. So based on your homework, assessments, and the like. And then there's another column, that's your skills. So are you a team player? Are you on time for class? Are your things neat? Do you clean up after yourself? Do you put an effort into your work? And then we average that. So at Mitra, your actual mark is the average of the two. Because
wow.
you could be a child who's getting distinctions, but are unbearable. You know, you spend the whole day making fun of other people because you are so smart. You don't help anybody. Your book's a mess because you're so smart you don't need to study. So we will drop your mark a bit, because if you go out there in the real world, you won't keep a job for very long. I don't care how smart you are. And then I have the other child who is not so clever, but they work their bums off. They're the first one there. They do the fourth draft if they have to. At break, they might come in a bit earlier so that they make sure they get the seat that they want in the class. So we'll acknowledge that. So sure, your marks might be in the 60s, 50s. But since that skills mark is stronger, it actually brings your actual mark up, because that's the kind of person an employer wants. You want the hard worker who will figure it out and the like. And also what we've done is that skills mark is the one that determines the phase that you're in at Mitra. So like right now, I have the Delta phase, which is grade 7, 8, and 9. I have 2 grade 6s in there because they were so mature that they actually could live up to the challenge of a teaching method where the teacher stands further back. Since our idea is that you become more independent, with the little kids, we're very much present because it's skills that you cannot figure out on your own. How to hold a pencil, what's multiplication, what's division. So the teacher's more involved. Then you move on to the next phase where, sure, the teacher's still there. The lessons are 1 hour and more structured. But as soon as those skills are in place, we can trust you more. So then you move on to the next phase where the teacher only comes in every half hour and say, you guys okay? Do you need a lifeline? Are you coping? And then when you get to grade 10, you just set up an appointment when you need them. But to be able to reach that space, your maturity, your skill set has to be very, very strong. So in theory, I could have a grade 10 who's still in the second phase because they're just very immature. So that's what we've done. It's a way of rewarding the skills. We will not change your grade, but we do empower you by giving you a more open and more liberating learning space.
There was something that you mentioned there actually that had a little bit of a moment for me. The fact that you actually measure that their skills performance over time, because one of the things that I always found during my time at school is like, you kind of go through the year and, every now and then maybe you're talking too much in class and the teacher's like, stop talking. But then at the end of the year, in your report card, you kind of get this comment from the teacher that says like, Alfie's always talking to his friends in class. But it's like, you don't get an opportunity to actually improve that, because it's like there's no place where it's measured or a place where you can see like how you're performing on the things other than the academics. Like, how am I as a student? There's no like there's no form of measurement and form of a platform for you as a student to actually try to improve and measure your progress over time. And I think it's so important for you to enable the students in that way.
And Alfie, what you're actually also saying there indirectly is there's not a lot of value placed on those skills at the moment in conventional schools, which is also something we're teaching these little humans growing up into adults that we have to coexist with. Those are characteristics that adults should value, but now we're teaching people they are undervalued. Respect for other people, honesty,
and parents understand the need for it, but it's one of the few things that it's the hardest to explain to them, or to convince them that it's worthwhile, because we need that mark. I need that distinction to get the scholarship, to go to varsity. So it's there, but I care more about the other one.
That's amazing.
So slowly. So they see the impact on their kids. They can see that they're growing as a person. But they ask about the academic mark. It's okay. We take care of both.
I wanted to ask as well, conventionally speaking, even while I was still in school, you hear about all these unconventional learning centers or schools or ways of learning. And it's always immediately assumed that those types of educational centers are for creatives or, people who are very artsy and expressive and going to sit on a tree in the morning and decide what you want to do for the rest of the day. All this hippie attachment to these schools. And I guess I know the answer, but I still want to hear your perspective. Is this center that you're running in the curriculum, is it only for type creatives, conventional creatives, or what's your take on that?
So ironically, people think I'm a technology school because we put so much emphasis on using the Chromebooks. Also, I suppose I'm more on the math analytical side.
Yes.
The head of academics is a science teacher. So we have put a lot of emphasis on that aspect of learning.
Nice.
Also to take away that fear of the math. We've been struggling to find the creative teachers. An English educator who will do things the Mitra way. It's ironic. Partly the creative teachers or the humanities, it's more difficult for them to let go, usually because they have stronger ideas. It's subject areas that are very much open to ideology and belief systems. So they're very, no, this is the truth. It's like, okay, yes, but there's, there's shades of gray around the edges, So we have to respect people.
Wow.
Apartheid is a problem, but relax, Let the child discover it. Don't hammer it into their heads. And we actually were talking about it last week. We need to add some art classes or something so that our kids develop the other side of their brains. But at the same time, the teachers that I have for science and for math are very well-rounded individuals. So they have a creative side to them. But so we're not a creative school, but we are creative. I don't know how to explain it. And you can see when you come in. I mean, my math teacher, her corner looks like a forest. I mean, every day she brings 3 more succulents to decorate her shelves.
You explain it. You explain it perfectly, though, because that's exactly what we're going for. Right? Creativity is integrated in everything. It's not something that needs to be separate.
Yesterday, what the kids did for English, their next task is to learn how to write instructions for someone. So in a school, what would happen is you would explain, they would have to either write down a recipe or explain how to tie a shoe. So what the English teacher did, she took them all outside, she brought soil and showed them to plant. So each kid took a little pot, they put their name on it, and she was explaining to them the whole planting process. And now they have to come in and from their experience, write down the instructions. That's pretty cool. So different, you're not sitting in your classroom figuring out instructions, but you're out there.
Yeah.
So she didn't tell me at first. So I'm looking out my window. I'm like, isn't this English? What's going on outside? But anyway, which is also great. It was her idea. So the teachers have that space.
Yeah.
But they have to feel comfortable. Let me try it out. She doesn't know how that's going to go. I mean, you could have the kids starting to throw dirt at each other. It's a huge risk.
Yeah.
Oh, your classroom management skills are deficient. You're training disrespectful, tumultuous human beings. Dirt's good. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
That's
that
amazing.
story.
So I've got two questions, and I'll ask you the first one to give you a bit of time to think about it, and then sort of step into the second one, and you can answer whichever sort of comes to mind first. So the first question that I have is, are there any because we've talked a lot about your approach to like the Mitra's approach to teaching and the sort of educational approach, and so let's say we had a prospective parent listening into this. And they're liking what they're hearing, and it's sounding amazing, but it's sounding amazing as a thing somewhere far out there. Their kid has to go to all of these other schools. Like, what might you tell a person who is hearing this and is liking what they're hearing, but is maybe afraid to take the step on behalf of their child? Are there maybe any stories, like specific stories that have those indicators of success that you spoke about, that might maybe help that person take that step? So that's sort of like the first question, whether it's a story or something that they might think about that you think is relevant. And then the second thing that I wanted to ask was, what are you in a sense almost like hoping for? Like if we take a step back from the day-to-days of what it is that you're doing, and maybe look at this over the next 1 to 5 to 10 to 20 years, like what is your like greater mission, or what is it that you're trying to do with this school? Because it's easy to get super focused on the day-to-day of it, but I'm assuming that there's a larger mission in mind. Can you speak to either one of those or both if you like?
Let me go in the order that you asked the questions. So for a prospective parent, we understand that we're very different. It is a risk, and it's not for everyone. We've had kids that we've met with the parents and said, your child's clever. They're nice people, but we're not for your child. They need the structure of a traditional school. They are not able to take advantage of this opportunity. They need more direction, and that's okay. So there are kids that we've told them, we're not serving you. If you carry on with us by the time you matric, you're actually going to fail because you don't have this inner drive to actually go ahead and do the research and set up your timetable, for whatever reason. They need more guidance, more direction, which is okay. There's all kinds of people out there. So we understand your concern. So what we actually do is we say, come for a day. Bring your child for a day like they're with us. They will get their own Chromebook. They will get their own locker, their own book, and they live the full day. You're not sure after one day. Bring them again. You can come for a whole week and live it. Have your child experience this way of learning. Have them come home and tell you, what did you learn today? And you'll see how much fulfilled they'll be, how much happier. And what we've seen is kids who come to test drive the school, and the parents, because we tell the parents, you can fetch them when you want to. We're here 6:30 to 5:30. The official timetable is 8 to 4:30. Come anytime you want. Parents have arrived at 3, and the child says, can you come back later? And they go home at 4:30 exhausted. They work. They work so hard. They go home exhausted. And the parents tell us, my child comes home, has a snack, and goes to bed. We don't give homework because it's not necessary. And they work so hard. And they have fun. And they want it. To me, it's been fascinating to see that drive. So experience it. And perhaps even after that, you'll decide it's not for your kid. Not a problem. We're not for everybody. If you're too creative, you won't like it, Steph, because you do need to work. There is a timetable. There is a deadline. Sure, you can write the test when you're ready, but it has to be this week sometime. It cannot be next year. You can go sit and read a book under the tree, no problem. But right now we're doing this, okay? So because in the real world there are deadlines. You need to show up to work. Exactly. You cannot come in your PJs unless you're in your room, in a Zoom call with the camera off. So there's barriers. So that's what I would say. If extra meals are very, very important to you and your child, and sports, don't come. We do fitness every day with the kids. They play a lot, they run a lot, but we don't have organized sports. And so for some parents, that's also very important. They need that for the university bursaries or whatever. If your kid is gifted, please don't take that away from your child. That wouldn't be fair. On the flip side, if you're more of an athlete that's training on their own, we might be great for you, because if you're a swimmer, you can come in at 10 every day. One of these kids who's with us, he's a cyclist, so he leaves at 12:30 twice a week. Okay, since you're working at your own pace, it doesn't really matter. My dream, when I have enough kids and teachers, is that we actually won't follow a school calendar. We'll be open 11 months, and you take the holidays that suit your family, and teachers take the holiday that suit their family. So it's not a 3-term school or a 4-term school, because you're working at your own pace. You have enough work under your belt to meet the curriculum requirements. You can take January off, or you can take whatever month you want, which also helps families get closer together. Dad is not determined by the kid's holiday when he wants to go off. Daddy's burnt out in March. Go in March, 1 week, no problem. Go for it. And I've talked so much, I forgot your second question, which was...
So the second question was about the vision of Mitra in the long term.
To reach as many kids as possible. So I want each venue to hold up to 120 kids, 10 per grade, max, because I'm sure you've read Maxwell's books. Is it The Tipping Point?
Yes,
Outliers? I don't remember, one of those books.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. I always confuse the two authors. He says that that's the ideal number for meaningful social interaction. As soon as you get over the 120 threshold or very close to it, you start getting subgroups. So for our whole culture of trust and openness, it's very important that everyone knows each other to a certain degree. So that would be like the maximum size. So as soon as we get to that number is to open a second one. And maybe even closer to a different demographic area. So the kids don't have to travel so far. Maybe have what's it called? A nationwide membership. So you actually can go to any venue to get your work done.
Cool.
Like what you're doing, Alfie, jumping around all over South Africa. You have your card, you swipe in. Today I'm at Mitra Soweto. Tomorrow I'm at Mitra Pretoria. Then I go to Mitra Cape Town. Because again, maybe that's what a parent needs. They need to have that mobility. Although I still haven't figured that one out, because the human interaction with the teacher is also very important. And that consistency of, I'm always with Mix X or Mr. Y. And so, but when I first idealized Mitra, that was part of the concept behind it.
Amazing.
And one thing I want to do, is that as soon as I have the older kids, the grade 10 through 12, who are more independent, have them become almost like junior staff. So currently I have my educators who are permanent employees, driving everything, making sure we're meeting standards and whatever. Then I have my university students who assist the different educators just to keep an amazing teacher to learner ratio. And then I want my omegas, those 3 grades, to have 1 hour a day, maybe 3 hours a week, that they are part of the system. So they're the ones being the junior staff for the grades 1, 2, and 3. They're the ones running the fitness program in the afternoon for the younger kids. They're the ones manning reception. They're the ones running the school's social media or answering emails. And it's a job, so you get paid for it. And then they can also decide, do I want to get that remuneration when I finish in matric? So they learn about savings, or I can get it every week, so I can use it for my transport. That's also part of where I see it going, because they love Mitra.
Yeah.
So that it really be theirs, you know?
All right. So I think we're probably going to be wrapping up kind of soon, but I've got one more question, or one more thing that I'd like you to comment on. So let's say somebody's been listening to what we've been talking about, and they've kind of really liked what they're hearing, and they'd like to contribute in some kind of way, or help Mitra along its journey because they believe in what you're doing. Is there anything that they could do, any way that they could get involved, contribute, volunteer, or anything of that sort?
Sure. We have an ongoing internship program. So that's for anyone who wants to just give some of their time, an hour, 2, 3, to be with the kids. So you don't have the burden of making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you're part of it. You're interacting with them and the like. That's one option. There's always the option of helping out with the more creative things at the end of the day. So we have a whole music program that's taking place over there, with marimbas. We have the fitness program, crafts for the younger children. That's always there. We need to grow in terms of marketing and awareness within reason, because we don't want to get into trouble for doing too hectic marketing. We're not licensed. But yeah, we were always welcome to feedback. If someone even just wants to come and spend a week to figure out what we're doing, and then say, you know what, this was great, but not this. I often ask my teacher friends, can you just come in and hang out and see what you think? And I do the same. I go and watch them. I went to watch a friend of mine who's teaching grade 1 just to see how they do it. I didn't like it at all, but I love my friend, so I didn't tell her anything. That's one option. If someone wants to help the school go further, I always recommend they help the bursary fund, so that we can bring more kids who school's not doing it for them, and yet they could go so far, because that will allow me to bring someone else in, but it's not for me, it's for that child. And we're trying to make it very personal, that if they're willing, the kid can know this person's sponsoring me, or this group of people is sponsoring me this year, and they can write a letter. So it's more personal. It's not just, I got some money, but this lady, this guy wants to make sure that I'm doing okay, or this group of people, right? Like a company, a department could sponsor kids. So every single person is not giving the whole school fee, but they work together to help one person forward that year. So I think that gives more meaning and value to the kids than anything else. I mean, we had one person who gave us the jungle gym. The kids love it. Someone else donated the marimbas. Someone else introduced us to the marimba teacher. But we're always open to meeting people like you, Alfie. I've learned a lot from our other conversations. So,
wonderful.
So, Irene, this has been really great and really interesting. I almost feel like it's ignited a little bit more of a hunger for myself in learning, which is usually not lacking, but it's just so inspiring, and just it's so comforting as well to feel a sense of hope for society, and seeing that people are actually putting in a little bit more personalized and adaptive methods to education. So thank you so much. It's been really great learning from you and seeing what's happening out there.
And thank you for the positive feedback. It's always nice to know that people see hope in what we're doing, especially when you're here day to day. You're like, oh, these children, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Something you reminded me of something, Steph. The university students who help us out, they come because they see an ad on Indeed and a bit of more pocket money, or I like working with kids. It's a 3-month program, but they usually say, can I stay longer? They come back and visit when they're gone. And they always say, my studies have improved because of what I've seen at Mitra. Their own university work says, I've learned how to study. I've realized I can go further in my own subjects. Because if they can do it, I can too. And that's one of the things we do. We say, if, let's say your task is, I don't know, you help this teacher at 8 and someone else at 12, stay here. I'll give you the coffee because it's essential. And then you have the Wi-Fi. We have more Chromebooks. Study while you're here. And in that way, you're modeling to my kids what it means to love learning and discover learning. So it's beautiful because actually they're learning from each other. The kids inspire the older ones and they love them as
beautiful. Well. Yeah. Wow.
All right then. I think we could probably go on for a lot longer, but I think we'll sort of let everyone listening get on with the rest of their days. Irene, thank you so much for making the time to come and speak with us. It's really been an honor and a pleasure.
And
thank you for having me.
Maybe, Irene, can you tell us if someone is interested to either reach out to you or to your center, where can they find you or just see and get a little bit more information?
Sure. So our website is www.mitra, MITRA.academy. And that's it. No .com, not .org, not .cosa, just .academy. And the email is hello@mitra.academy. You can also find that on the website. And we have the prospectus there. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, Mitra Academy, without anything in between. And you can see the kids in action.
Amazing.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes and on the social post as well, so people can just find you easily. And thank you so much again, Irene. It has been so great.
All right, we froze there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And have a good one. And to everybody listening, thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.
Cheers, guys. See you soon.